Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1190. Resonance. As Anthony Stephen Vincent's words echoed in Memorial Square, it spread to other areas. The Loanese citizens who participated in the Mass were both moved and sad, feeling warmth in the midst of their depression. In a different square, different choirs began to chant the hymns. The ethereal and holy voice seemed to echo deep in everyone's heart. Full-faced above the land stood the crimson moon, and sweet it was to dream of themselves, of child and wife and parents, but evermore one. Unknowingly, everyone felt their spirits being cleansed and their spirituality naturally released. They seemed to have entered a dream and were strolling in a quiet darkness. Their children were sleeping here. Their parents, their wives, their husbands, their friends, and the deceased were no longer suffering. They no longer had any pain, their expressions were peaceful and gentle. We look upward into the night sky. We tenderly say her name. Ever-night goddess! If she heard us, she would surely agree. Smiling with purity at the dead. Come, rest and sleep well, my children, too. The people who were strolling in the dream felt awash with intense sorrow once again, as though they realized that they were really going to bid each other farewell. They recalled all the beautiful memories from the past. They recalled the scene of their family enjoying delicacies and having fun at the dining table. They recalled the people who looked at them warmly, and the pain of seeing them get hurt. When they learned of their passing, it was as if they could tear their souls apart. They recalled the dark clouds and separation that had been brought to this war. They were sleeping peacefully in this serene nation, no longer having any worries. However, the people who survived had to suffer the days and nights, turning haggard and withered. One teardrop after another flowed down. The people participating in Mass at Memorial Square could no longer suppress their emotions as they silently released the pain they had accumulated. A huge wave of sadness filled the air, mixed with the chanting of the choir, as though it had a corporeal form. Cross your hands humbly over your breast. Make the silent prayer, and shout from the bottom of your heart. The only escape is tranquility. 3. The people who were sobbing silently with their eyes closed subconsciously followed the content of the hymns and made similar gestures. Then they shouted in their hearts, infected with each other's emotions. The only escape is tranquility. The grief reached an apex with more than 10,000 hearts resonating at Memorial Square. At this moment, Audrey opened her eyes and bent down. She took out a bottle of potion from the leather pouch that her golden retriever, Susie, was carrying. There were countless points of light floating in the potion, just like the manifestation of the sea of collective subconscious. Audrey didn't hesitate. Under such circumstances, she removed the bottle cap and gulped down the liquid inside. Unlike in the past where she could experience the potion slush through her throat and into her stomach, she immediately felt abnormal. She felt that she could no longer sense her body. Her entire being seemed to have condensed into an idea as she merged into the illusory sea around her. This was her first time directly seeing the sea of collective subconscious without passing through a dream or mind island. As though she had returned to her mother's embrace before she was born, she returned to the very beginning where the imprints left by human ancestors were washed away by the tides as they crumbled and were influenced. There was fear, madness, and all kinds of terrifying mental corruption. For a moment, Audrey found it difficult to resist. Her consciousness faded, and her body shook as though it was on the brink of melting away. However, the sea nearby wasn't serene. There was a certain degree of undulations, spreading the intense sorrow and pain around. Under such influence, the self-aware Audrey, who was about to be assimilated by the sea of collective subconscious, also began to resonate, generating uncontrollable feelings of grief within her. The grief spread from one thought to another. Soon, it filled the blob of thoughts that Audrey had mutated into. It pierced through her soul body and pierced her soul. Audrey finally regained a little of her senses. She skillfully placated herself, constantly giving cues to remove the corruption until she regained her senses. The voice in her ears became clearer and clearer, louder and louder. Finally, it reverberated through the sea of collective subconscious. The only escape is tranquility. The only escape is tranquility. The only escape is tranquility. Audrey repeated the prayer as her figure quickly turned clear. With a mere thought, she split herself into many transparent and illusory bodies. She traveled through the sea of collective subconscious and reached the mind islands that represented different people and stepped onto them. In these places, she could clearly see the sadness coming from different people. The bombshells that came from the sky, the airship that made up a fleet, the letters spelling bad news sent from the front lines, blood and flesh splattering in front of them, and the person who they loved suddenly collapsing in front of them, the pile of toys that no longer had an owner, the fit of coughs that came from the great smog. The only escape is tranquility. The golden retriever, Susie, also shut her eyes in Massachusetts. She used the human language to recite those words in her heart, but she failed to notice any changes in her surroundings. Suddenly, in her soul, in her body of heart and mind, Audrey's voice sounded. Susie, I succeeded. I've always been worried that I'll become more and more indifferent as my sequence increases due to the potion's effects, that I'll become more and more like a mythical creature instead of a human. Susie raised her head in confusion and saw that although the blonde girl's eyes were tightly shut, tears had unknowingly covered her face. Then she heard Audrey say in her heart, "Thankfully, I can still feel their sorrow. How nice!" In Susie's eyes, teardrops fell from the corner of the blonde girl's eyes. It was crystal clear. At this moment, the sun's final ray of light was swallowed. The night brought about tranquility. Everyone opened their eyes and said in a calm voice, "The only escape is tranquility." After crying without restraint, the bright, cheerful Audrey's mood became heavy. She became a little sensitive and a little sad. It made everyone who saw her feel a sense of love from the bottom of their hearts. Under all kinds of protection, she returned to Empress Burrow and returned to her room. Only then did she have the chance to seriously examine herself and digest the knowledge and experience she gained from the sea of collective subconscious. Others might not be able to tell, but Audrey knew very well that the tall, blonde, green-eyed beauty in the mirror already possessed extraordinary strength and exaggerated dragon-scale defenses. She could break through a block of steel with one punch. Oh, I can still use dragon transformation. It's equivalent to using an incomplete mythical creature form. However, I have to wait until I get used to the potion and keep stacking up the correct psychological cues. Otherwise, I can lose control. Every dragon transformation can exceed a certain amount of time. Otherwise, even if I have the means to treat my mind and soul, I'll be contaminated by madness and confusion, causing me to lose control. My current limit is about a minute. The core power of a manipulator is manipulation. I can allow a body of heart and mind pass through the sea of collective subconscious and enter another person's mind island. I can directly change their subconscious and read their thoughts, silently driving them to do all sorts of things. Matching manipulation is virtual persona. I can create many personas, allowing them to have a corresponding body of heart and mind. This aspect can resist a lot of influence in the mind domain, and on the other hand, it can allow me to use them to silently invade the target's island of consciousness without any signs of it. I currently can have only 13 virtual personas. A manipulator can also create a terrifying mental plague. By using the sea of collective subconscious, I can spread all kinds of mental illnesses and extreme madness. Yes, awe has turned into mind deprivation, a huge area of effect version. It's no longer just a single effect of awe. I can also transform my designated thoughts into a mind storm that will sweep the surroundings, affecting all my enemies. As a manipulator, it naturally comes with the ability to travel the sea of collective subconscious. It's called consciousness stroll. Otherwise, my target would have long left by the time I arrived at a location after a series of complicated manipulations. Audrey looked at herself in the mirror and suddenly revealed a faint smile. Then, she puffed up her cheeks and opened her mouth as if she was about to spew something. Since her mythical creature form was a mind dragon, it definitely had to have some form of dragon's breath. This was an attack that could directly stimulate and harm the target's body of heart and mind and soul body. It dealt damage in an area of effect manner, an upgraded version of psychic piercing. Following that, Audrey's green eyes turned slightly, and she looked away. She sighed inwardly. This is what it means to be a demigod. These powers make even me feel afraid. How powerful is Mr. World for him to be able to kill Vin Rambus? In the ancient palace above the fog. As the participants of the hunting operation made their preparations, they decided to organize a private gathering to discuss the details. A manipulator is that terrifying? The magician Furs looked at Miss Justice beside her and blurted out in shock. Just now, Audrey had briefly mentioned the changes she had undergone after becoming a demigod. Although she didn't elaborate in detail to protect her trump cards, it still left the magician, the hermit, Judgment, and the star in shock. Actually, it's not that terrifying. Mr. World knows very well. Audrey cast her gaze to the bottom of the long, model table. The World Gehrman Sparrow didn't nod as he tersely acknowledged. I also had powerful helpers before I could kill Vin Rambus. He paused and said, before discussing the hunting operation, I would like to know how to make the Abraham family sense my friendliness. 1. Adapted from The Lotus Eaters by Tennyson. 2. Adapted from The Cry of the Children by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. 3. Adapted from The Bridge of Sighs by Thomas Hood and Lotus Eaters by Tennyson.